It started with silence, a silence too rich to be empty, and too loud to be ignored. She arrived at the Grand Orleans Hotel just past noon, alone, wearing a soft pink kimono and carrying a single silver suitcase. Her eyes swept across the gilded lobby, not with arrogance, but with the quiet weight of someone who had traveled far from her world into a place that neither saw her nor truly wanted to. No one greeted her in her language. No concierge dared more than a stiff smile. She handed over a handwritten note at the front desk, neatly inked in kanji. The young manager blinked at it, forced a chuckle, then looked around for anyone who could make sense of it. Misjudgment often comes wrapped in elegance. Not in rage or ridicule, but in polished smiles, shallow politeness, and whispered judgments made in passing. From the moment she stepped into the hotel lobby, graceful in her posture, refined in her silence, the staff decided her story for her. They saw the reserved expression, the understated luxury of her clothing, the foreignness in her eyes, and they wrote her off. Probably eccentric, someone thought. Doesn't speak English, another whispered. She must have booked the wrong hotel, a third assumed silently, watching her hesitate momentarily at the check-in counter, not out of confusion, but because she was reading the design of the place, taking in its flaws and its charm the way she always did with any investment property. No one asked her name. No one even tried to pronounce it correctly. But the name on the reservation was clear: Reiko Ishikawa, not just a guest. A woman whose decisions shifted markets. CEO. Investor. Philanthropist. A global force hidden behind a demure presence. Had they bothered to Google her, the concierge might have stood straighter. The manager might have come down to greet her personally. They might have offered her the suite upgrade they saved for their very important guests. But they didn't single quotes instead. They offered her smiles that felt practiced, over-accommodating but never truly attentive. They spoke slowly, as if volume could substitute for understanding. She asked for tea, clearly and softly. They brought her coffee with 3 sugars and a smile that said, "I hope this helps." She motioned toward the thermostat in her suite, an elegant but malfunctioning unit, and they responded by handing her a dinner menu. Still, she remained gracious. That was her way. Her requests were measured, her tone composed, her expression subtle. But that subtlety was her strength, not her weakness. She had spent years learning how to say more with less. But the staff weren't listening. They were hearing what they expected to hear: fragmented English, perhaps, or a woman out of place. And so her words drifted into the air, unacknowledged. As the marble floor swallowed the echo of her presence, she wasn't loud, she didn't complain, but she noticed everything. She noticed who offered help and who offered performance, who made space and who made assumptions. That night, she sat by the window, sipping a cup of green tea finally sent by the only staff member who had taken a moment to ask, "Is there anything you prefer?" And when she answered in soft, fluent English, the young black maid didn't flinch or look surprised. She smiled, bowed her head slightly, and said, "Thank you for your patience, ma'am." Because dignity recognizes dignity. And misjudgment, no matter how finely dressed, always reveals itself eventually. Silence isn't powerless, it's patient. And for 3 long days, she let that silence stretch across every room she entered, every hallway she crossed. She said little, sometimes nothing at all. In the dining hall, she took her meals in the far corner booth, always the same table, the one that faced the window and gave her a perfect view of the morning mist rolling over the hedges. She would order softly, never twice the same thing. Her voice, when it did surface, was gentle like a violin in a cathedral. And then it would disappear again, swallowed by the sound of dishes clinking and conversation she never joined. Staff tried not to stare, but they watched her anyway. They wondered, Waitresses whispered behind menus. The concierge glanced at her room record too often. Even guests speculated. She was alone but didn't seem lonely. She didn't smile yet. She didn't frown. She didn't look bored. If anything, she looked like she was waiting. But waiting for what? No one could tell. She sat in the evening lounge each night as the sky turned violet and then navy. The same chair by the window, a cup of jasmine tea untouched for hours. A worn leather notebook in her lap, its pages filling, with handwriting that dipped and curved like the rain tracing lines on the glass. No phone, no laptop, just that notebook and the slow, deliberate movement of her pen. There were no tantrums, no angry complaints about service or noise, no requests for attention. She never raised her voice, but her silence became louder with it. Each passing hour, it crept into the air around her. Unreadable and unwavering, it made people uneasy not out of fear, but out of ignorance. They couldn't figure her out. And that, more than anything, unsettled them. Some thought she might be eccentric. Others wondered if she was grieving. A few assumed she didn't speak the language. One staff member suggested maybe she was writing a book. Another joked she was probably CIA, but none of them knew. And her presence grew heavier not because she imposed it, but because she didn't explain it. Each morning, they found an origami crane placed carefully on her breakfast plate, never handed over, just left behind. A small, precise fold of white paper. At first, they thought it was a decoration, maybe something she carried. But each crane was new. Each one folded fresh. Some were tucked under the edge of her teacup. Others nestled against the corner of the breadbasket. Each one quietly offered, without fanfare, without explanation, a gift, a ritual, a message. No one ever asked. And yet, those cranes remained long after she stood and walked away. Long after she returned to her room and closed the door without a sound. It wasn't her voice they remembered. It was the feeling she left behind, like a whisper that hovered after someone exits a room. A sense that they'd missed something, something important. Something not said, but deeply felt. Dignity wears no uniform, but it can wear an apron. Enter Sarah. Housekeeping, afro puffed and tucked neatly into a bun, quiet, mid-40s, worked. 3 jobs, 2 cleaning, 1 caregiving. The kind of woman people didn't ask about. The kind who moved through polished hotel corridors like a whisper, always present but rarely seen. Guests stepped around her cart without ever glancing her way. Staff greeted her with polite nods but never lingered. Managers thanked her efficiency but never asked her story. She was the type of woman whose work was invisible unless it was undone. On that Wednesday morning, Sarah arrived at room 814 just after 9 a.m. The hallway was silent, carpet soft under her shoes, scent of citrus cleaner still clinging to her gloves. She knocked gently, as always. Once, twice. Then again. The door opened slowly. A quiet nod from the woman inside. Sarah returned it with her usual smile and stepped inside. The room was spotless. Bed made with the precision of a soldier. Not a towel out of place. Not a fingerprint on glass. Ms. Ishikawa sat by the window, gazing down at the courtyard where the morning mist was beginning to rise. Dressed in tailored slacks and the pale blouse, she looked like she could be a diplomat or a professor. But she hadn't spoken much since checking in 3 nights ago, not to staff, not to guests. Only her name was known, Ms. Riko Ishikawa, and even that wasn't said aloud often. Sarah moved quietly, began wiping surfaces, straightening, freshening the air. Then she noticed them. 3 thick volumes on the table, their covers brushed smooth with care. Japanese calligraphy manuals. A brush rested on a napkin, black ink gently drying in a dish. She paused. a memory catching in her throat. Then softly, respectfully, she said it. Konnichiwa. Ms. Ishikawa's head turned instantly. The first time her face truly shifted. Her posture changed, eyes wide and unsure if she'd heard correctly. You speak Japanese? Sarah lowered her hands, nodded gently. Not much. I studied for 2 years, she smiled faintly. My son, he was stationed in Okinawa. When he left, I promised him I'd learn, so I did. Little by little. The air between them seemed to soften. Ms. Ishikawa blinked slowly, as if re-evaluating everything she'd assumed. All this time, she'd walked through marble hallways and seen only silence. Politeness, yes, but distance. Her presence met with stares that turned quickly away. People assumed she didn't speak English, that she was difficult or odd. No one had asked. No one had seen her, but Sarah had. 2 women, one in an apron, the other in silk. A quiet bridge of words, small but sacred. The silence cracked open. Not broken but transformed. In 10 minutes, Sarah understood more about Ms. Ishikawa than the entire staff had in 3 days. Not because she had some special training or secret access, but because she looked, she listened, she cared. And that, more than any scripted greeting or polished presentation, was what Ms. Ishikawa had come looking for. Ms. Ishikawa wasn't just staying at the hotel to rest. She was watching, quietly auditing the heartbeat of the place. Every detail mattered, the tone of voice at check-in, the way towels were folded, the silence behind the smiles. She didn't want the corporate tour or the pre-arranged meetings. She wanted the truth of the place, unscripted and unrehearsed. She was considering a multi-million-dollar investment in a global hospitality venture. And this hotel, anonymous and unaware, was being tested. Sarah didn't know any of that when she knocked on the door to room 814. She was just Doi.